Uh, what general analysis can you make, and what is actually at stake in that Horn of African country?
Well, what I would say about Sudan, knowing that Sudan is a body of the African structure or the African continent, so it is vital for Sudan to survive in its leadership and for Sudan to be able to create a nation whereby the Sudanese themselves can be able to join in the development of the unity and the unification and the restoration of the African people. This is very important. And if you look at the systems in place right now in Sudan, we have come to really see that coups are a threat to the international community and to the, how will I call it, the roadmap of democracy. And like I've said before, in history, we have seen how coups in Africa have always turned out to give Africans the leaders that reflect the demands of their own people. Like I kept citing people like Sankara, Gaddafi. We know of Mugabe, Robert Mugabe, in the days where he was fighting over 300 white minorities that were ruling over 7 million Zimbabweans in Zimbabwe, where Mugabe was in exile. We went to another African country before he could take over that nation and led that nation until his passing away. So what I'm saying here is that if we do not find how will I call it, a kind of a means whereby we can integrate the idea of people or leaders that really want to seek the interests of the people, and like I kept saying, they must not pass through a democratic process. They must not be democratically elected, because we have realized that leaders that are democratically elected are always partisan. They are always tribalistic. They are always there to protect their party and their democracy, and not the people in whom they were called to represent. And that is why we are saying that in Africa, democracy, don't get me wrong, like I kept saying, democracy in Africa is an abuse because the African people are underdeveloped and the African people are not civilized. For one to be civilized simply means for one to adapt to another person's culture. That is a simple meaning of civilization. So who is civilizing who here? Are we being civilized by the African civilization or by our founding father, or is it an importation of a system by the West which wants to take over Africa and force the African people to adapt to what is against their own value and against their own culture and against their own identity? Like I said, and I gave very clear statistics, an example in the West, when democracy was brought in, they had already lived, built a legacy, and they had already, how will I call it, achieved an empire. They have already built success. They have lifted up their citizens into a point of above poverty and above struggling. I mean, where people are struggling in their nation. They had crossed past that level before they brought in democracy to give people the right to participate in leadership building, in nation building, and give everybody the sense of belonging. That is what democracy brings, let me put it that way. But it still does not change the fact that it is still the rule of the minority over the majority. But as long as it's in the interest of the people, it's not a problem. But in Africa, the damaging part about it is that you are putting a structure in place where the people are coming from, how will I call it, people are coming from a very a long background of slavery, post-colonial rule, colonial rule. I mean, we need individuals, like we have been saying, citing like Gaddafi and Magufuli, Sankara, the Andy of Madagascar, and many others that are struggling to build Africa with the Africans that are in Africa, so that we can see how we can build a society that really looks like us. But the situation right now in Sudan is complicated because you have so many divisions. You have the intrusion of the West. You have the pro-democracy activist movement. You have the civilians, you have the military. How are you going to merge all of these things? But one thing the Sudanese need to understand is that there is no offense if the military oversee the transitional government. This is very important, because that is the role of the military in every country, to protect the state and to secure the rights of the people so that the state does not abuse the people. So if the military is involved in this transitional process, I think that is their role, and they cannot keep the military out away because they ousted the transitional government, which they have still reinstated, but to make sure that whoever or the transitional government which is in place is non-partisan. it is such a one that is going to reflect the people, because this is very important. If we are going to have leaders that are not going to secure the interests of the Sudanese, welder all the divisions of the Sudanese people and bring that nation into a place whereby they can use their own resources, they can both human resources, natural resources in building their nation. This is very important, that at the end of the day, we should be able to have a government that should stand for the people and to represent the people, and not a partisan government, which I know democracy always continues to create partisan governments that are there to protect your democracy. And like I still say again, that Africans must understand that the way the imperialists had structured Africa is in such a way it is difficult. Because if we want to go down this road in talking about Sudan today, talking about Nigeria tomorrow, talking about South Sudan the next day, next week we are talking about Ethiopia, we will never survive in Africa. As a matter of fact, knowing that all these minority nations which were broken down in 1884 was done intentionally to make sure that all those indigenous governments that were going to man those nations were going to represent the interests of the imperialists. And until we begin to understand that we don't need to go down this road of managing Sudan as a nation, it is just like telling me that my hand is going to function as an entire body. Mm-hmm. That is the way it is when we are talking about Sudan. We are talking about Ethiopia. This is a body which was broken down in pieces. And we need systems and we need structures, we need leaders who are going to weld all these broken pieces and form back a body which is going to represent the African people. If we are going to run these nations individually like private state-owned companies, indigenous governments that have been contracted by the imperialists to run this nation on conditions will never reflect the Sudanese, will never reflect the African people, because democracy was not brought to Africa by the founding fathers. And like I still say, we need Pan-African leaders, Pan-Africanists in leadership. We need Pan-Africanism to spread in Africa, because this is the only system which will build Africa and will weld back Africa together. We have seen, like I keep saying, that nobody in the days of Sankara, and this is a very huge challenge which I'm noticing between the head of states in Africa today, that are not accepting coups in Africa. I have seen that in the West African bloc, where they have heavily condemned coups in Africa, only because they realize that if you want to compare coup leaders and democratically elected leaders, it's just like night and day. You can never compare Nana Addo and Thomas Sankara. This is a major challenge, whereby I feel that these democratically elected presidents, they feel ashamed of the legacies which coup leaders have done in Africa. And they must understand that there is just no way, as a matter of fact, we don't want to be civilized slaves. We don't want to have civilized presidents who are still under bondage and still under yoke. We need liberators. To me, I think that Africa, we need to really go back to our founding fathers, go back to our history, because I keep asking this question. Who did not know what Mohammed Gaddafi did in Africa? Who does not know what P.L. Lumumba represented in Africa? Who does not know what Marcus Garvey in America in 1927 up to when he passed away, what Marcus Garvey did? Marcus Garvey was the only black man who led the greatest black revolution that instituted Liberia to become a nation where it was going to harbor all the slaves that were taken out of Africa to return back in Africa. And we realized that the imperialists had to make sure that Marcus Garvey was assassinated. I want to really know that all these African heads of state, can they not see what our founding fathers have done? Who democratically elected Marcus Garvey? Nobody. Who democratically elected Thomas Sankara? Nobody. Why can we not go back to what works for us and defend what works for us? We can only compare two things when the first one is bad. Democratically elected presidents are not doing us any good in Africa. As a matter of fact, how long have we been in the road of democracy? Sudan was sanctioned by America for 3 decades under democracy in Africa. Where are we going to? Then you are still telling the Sudanese again to build a transitional government to take them back to democracy, which I know in Africa, that as long as the United Nations exists, all African nations are federal states under the United Nations. This simply means that the United Nations controls the democracy of Africa and impose on its leadership. That is why they talk about us, because we have accepted to use systems which does not reflect us. Where can we not go back and how will I call it, invoke or revoke back the spirit of our founding fathers that we know? I still say, Blaise Compaoré, who is now in Ivory Coast, that has now been given citizenship in Ivory Coast. What was the crime that the Burkina Faso is holding again? For killing Thomas Sankara. What am I saying here is that if the coup leader in Sudan has reinstated the former prime minister under certain conditions, that there will be a treaty that the military will supervise the transitional government, I think this is very important. Because as far as I know from history and as I know from now, all coup leaders are speaking the voices of the people. They want the interests of the people. Why the West is talking about building back a civilian government, I keep saying we do not need civilians in Africa. It has not worked in Ethiopia. That's why Abiy Ahmed has called out on all Africans internationally, both home and abroad. All people cannot call the diasporans because majority of the diasporans are youth.
Youth, for sure.
Whereby the African population, both home and abroad, almost 90% makes young people. So a young man like Abiy Ahmed can call the diasporan, but old men cannot call diasporan because they do not, their generation does not reflect, they do not have that population to call out. So what I'm saying here is that we need to understand that if Sudan is going to emerge, Sudan is not going to emerge as a nation. Sudan is going to emerge as, how will I call it, a federal state in Africa, not under the UN, until we begin to break away this ideology of nations. Sudan, Congo, Mozambique, we need to break them all down. That is what the OAU was doing, to build a union which was going to be the government of Africa, and all these other broken pieces become federal states. That's another way of building back the continent and welding back the continent. But if we are going to allow each nation to have a democratically elected president, I swear we will never have presidents in Africa that will reflect the people, because these indigenous governments are built by the imperialists to manage those nations. How will I put it? You know, when a man leases out a property, you take that property on the behalf of that person and you begin to pay him rent for leasing that property out to you. That is why we pay colonial tax. What is the meaning of colonial tax? It simply means that what we are running has been leased to us. It's not ours. Else, we will not pay colonial tax. When the 13 colonies of America came in about 1876 and fought the war against the British, because the British were asking them to pay colonial tax, and they said they could not pay colonial tax being British citizens, and they went to war and gained their independence. That is why Britain cannot demand colonial tax from America. You can only pay colonial tax when you are a tenant in somebody's home, and Africa needs. This is the position of people like Nana Addo. This is the position of people like Buhari. They ought to be ashamed. As a matter of fact, all these democratically elected presidents in Africa should be ashamed, because all of them are running this nation on the behalf of the imperialists. Whether we like it or not, that is the simple truth, and for Africans to understand. And that is why I, as a Pan-Africanist, I encourage coups that will give the people the right and the liberty to decide their own future, that will restore the honor and the dignity of the founding fathers of Africa. It is very important, because if we want to build organizations like AU in Africa that obstructs coups in Africa, it means that AU has become a cancer to Africa. Because AU cannot tell me, or the ECOWAS bloc cannot tell me, that if they are asking Mamadi or Assimi Goïta, it is the same they are talking to Thomas Sankara. It's the same they are talking to Mohamed Gaddafi. It means that they have denied to honor those who deserve honor, and they are honoring those who do not deserve honor. That is the way I look at it. So we need to rethink.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Atem Ebako. If you're just joining us, this is Views on the Continent. Numbers on the screen. We are looking at Sudan, the latest political agreement that was signed between Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok and the military council led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. And according to this agreement, one of the points on this 14-point agreement is that political prisoners and those detained after the coup are going to be released. So you can always call us and tell us what you think about today's topic. Now, when you look at this agreement that was signed between the Prime Minister and the military council, how favorable do you think this is for the Sudanese people?
I think that's one of the best deals the Sudanese people have gotten, because that has put the former transitional government or the existing transitional government and the Prime Minister under scrutiny to make sure that they are truly going to build out a system which is non-partisan. Okay. Because that is the interest of the military. And whether we like it or not, we cannot exclude the military in the decision making of the transitional government, because we need militaries in Africa. We don't need civilians. Civilians don't offer anything. Africa is at war. We are facing very stiff resistance with the West. So we need military. We need armed men and women. What are we doing with civilians in Africa? What are we doing with people who got no future? We want people who can be able to defend and fight for their rights. That's what are we not. I was so surprised to see the reaction, which is still going on even as we speak worldwide on the behalf of Ethiopia. Yeah. What is happening in Ethiopia? Because Abiy Ahmed, as a young man, like I kept saying, when you are faced with such resistance, the best you can do is to call out for your own people.
For sure.
Because the international community, which seems to have been favoring a transitional government. Have you ever seen where a bank favors and supports and loans money to a transitional government and refuse to loan a project which is for the benefit of the entire African people? This is just to tell you that the bank has a personal interest with the transitional government, and that is what the military is trying to prevent. Making sure that the transitional government is going to stick by the rules and the game to make sure that at the end of the day, what is going to come out is something that we're going to defend the right of the Sudanese. So this is very important, that the treaty that was signed between the Prime Minister and the military, even though about 12 members of some ministers have resigned due to the engagement of the military, as if they are legalizing the coup. What is wrong with coups in Africa? I have asked those same ministers, which of them can have the kind of qualification that people like Thomas Sankara, that we are still talking of, key icon people today in Africa, that till Africa will live, will never stop talking about Thomas Sankara, but nobody will talk about Nana Addo, nobody will talk about Buhari, nobody will talk about this Prime Minister, but they will live to talk about Muhammad Gaddafi, P.L. Lumumba, Magufuli, Sankara, and many others that have stood in this footstep. And so I do not find the problem of coups becoming illegal or becoming, how will I call it, against the law. Whose law? If it's against the United Nations, we are not building Europe in Africa. We want to build Africa for the Africans. And that is why I am saying that. To me, Madame Florencia, I will still say this again for the purpose of emphasis. They have rated the population of Africa as it stands about 1.3 billion. But it will surprise a lot of Africans that we have over 3.5 billion Africans out of Africa. The entire population of the black race, both home and abroad, ranges to 5 million and above, which is rated the highest populous people on earth are the black people. So if you are telling me of 1.3 people, 1.3 billion Africans, leaving 3.5 billion Africans out of the process of building Africa, I think that's another form of mental damage or another form of insanity. If we do not get these Africans, do you know what happened in 1927 when Liberia was heavily indebted? Marcus Garvey led one of the highest fundraising of about 1.2 million, about $2 million at that period. It was a lot of money, and that money was raised up
by Africans both home and abroad to salvage the debt crisis that Ethiopia, Liberia had gotten himself into. What am I simply trying to say? Marcus Garvey showed us that it was really possible that if Africans work together, we do not need the World Bank. That money was being generated by Africans in the diaspora to give support to Liberia when Liberia was heavily indebted. So we don't need to abandon 3.5 billion Africans and then we are going to a World Bank which does not have value, only have printed papers. We need to change this idea of running Africa with the suggestions and the systems laid by the UN. UN was built in 1945 when Africa was not reborn. The DNA of the West in Africa is democracy. If you take out democracy, you have solved the problem of Africa. I'm telling you the simple truth. We have seen in history where the Africans in the diaspora have fought so hard than ever before to return back to Africa. And that was abolished. That was prevented. All those leaders, whether it's Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Marcus Garvey, all of them were assassinated by the same FBI, by the same CIA, just to make sure that the Africans do not come together. Africans need to go back to their genealogy. The first thing the imperialists did in Africa is separating Africans from Africans. That simply means that a house which is divided against itself cannot stand. Sure. Many Africans say that it was religion, Christianity, that has enslaved Africa. It is not true. Whatever a man uses in deceiving you, there's a degree of truth in that thing. Else, it's impossible for him to deceive you. Those who deceive the world are those who know the truth and have refused to free those who are living in ignorance. And they decide to do it that way so that they can control those who do not have insight or knowledge. So if they use the gospel in deceiving the African people, that simply means there's a degree of truth in that gospel. It means that if you have the same thing he used in deceiving you, you become free. If a man takes a gun and points at you, it means there's a degree of truth in that gun that makes you fear. If you hold that same gun, you and that man becomes equal. So whatever was used in chaining a man down or deceiving a man or sending a man into bondage, even in prostitution, women go to do prostitution because they want money. But if you give them money, they will not do prostitution anymore. So whatever sends you into captivity, once you get the same thing, you become free. So the gospel or the Christianity is not what enslaved Africa. When a man uses something illegally or in an evil way, it becomes the man's problem and not the thing that was used. This is very important for Africans to understand. Today in the world, we are led by the United Nations. The United Nations are not made up of pastors. These are politicians who have used biblical principles in subjecting the people under control. And we need to understand these things. So the first thing they did was separating Africans from Africans. What Abiy Ahmed is doing right now is bringing Africans with Africans together in order for him to get the power and the free and the liberty to lead Ethiopia. These are the principles that I am expecting the African leaders to begin to apply if they are ever going to survive. I am telling you of 3.5 billion Africans with a war set in the middle. 1.2 billion Africans are suffering in Africa, forgetting to understand that all they need is an alliance. Why was this prime minister reinstated back in Sudan? Because the international community and other organizations have mounted pressure on the coup leader, and he has realized that he cannot survive if he's going to resist alone. He had to bring him back and reinstate him back. So each time there's an alliance, like I keep saying, but if he really had a support from the Africans, like what you are seeing with Abiy Ahmed, he would have persisted. But he has no support. So we need Africans to come back home. We need to build, in other words, let me put it this way. We need to travel with Africa out of Africa. Bring Africa closer to the doors of Africans so that Africans can return back to Africa even in their mind. They can see what is happening in Africa, and we need to organize and assemble ourselves so that they can begin to support what we are doing in Africa. They have made Africa in such a way that Africa is so disorganized, so divided, whereby the diasporans do not even find a taste to even come back home. So it is us is given the responsibility to begin to organize ourselves and begin to seek for that alliance. They will help us because they are Africans. They cannot leave their motherland. They cannot forsake the womb of their own mother, they will return back. But we need to understand the political system that is keeping Africa in this division. When you call out 20 people who are lived in hunger for 20 days or 15 days and you set a plate of food in front, like I keep saying, all of them will come out from 20 different angles. Because each man wants to survive. If Africans used to know in some of their roads in Africa due to traffic, you will see how the road users are fighting among themselves. But you need to understand the person who has created that condition for you to fight against your brother. I watch people are saying that blacks should not kill blacks. Africans hate Africans. Africans do not hate Africans. You need to understand those that have created that condition for Africans who would do everything to survive, even if they need to hurt their own brother. It's a condition, it's a system. When they put you in that system, you behave the same. It's as simple as it is. That is human psychology. Take him out of that system, you come to... What explains the fact that an Africa will smile with his own enemy and hate his own brother? It simply means there's a condition which you have put that allows him to behave that way. This is also human psychology. And we need to understand this thing, that instead of us blaming ourselves, blaming our leaders, we have tried in Africa. Then this time around, we need to be doing the right thing in order to change the equation. And the right thing we need to do is do what Abiy Ahmed is doing right now. Calling out on the diaspora. Calling out on all the Africans. We know Haiti. Haiti fought the imperialists until they gained their independence. But they gained their independence is not in Africa. It's still on the air. Jamaica, the same. They are still on the air. Dominican Republic, they are still on the air. Suriname, they are still on the air. Everybody is still on the air. When are they going to return back home? When are we going to be... These are Africans that we cannot deny. Like I keep saying. For a president to enter power and ignore the fact that there are Africans in the diaspora, that president is a witch. It's another form of witchcraft. That's why you realize that Nana Addo has opened his door in Ghana. For any African who wants to return back home, Ghana gives you free land. They support you. I have Jamaicans that are returning back to Ghana. Free land. Nana Addo has offered Ghana into that form. Sierra Leone is also doing the same. Few other African countries are doing the same. They have come to realize that if we do not build that Africa which gives that sense of belonging, whereby an African in Jamaica does not feel anymore like a slave, but in his mind he can even return back home and understand that he is welcome in his own house. This is the kind of Africa we need. This is very important.
Thank you so much, Mr. Atem Ebako. Our lines are opened. You can always call us and tell us what you think about the current situation in Sudan, the latest political agreement that has been signed, points amongst which is the release of detainees and political prisoners that were apprehended, that were arrested after the coup. Call us and tell us what you think. And I think we already have our first caller on the line. Hello, sir, and thanks for joining us on the program this day.
Laurencia and the panelists, I am Martin calling from Douala. Yes, Madam Laurencia, you see what is bringing much of resistance to this agreement between Hamdok and the military leader so far is that they are technically, the military know what they have done. They actually know that what they have done is not constitutional. So they want to technically legitimize it and make sure they wave away any consequences that may follow them afterward. Another second issue, Laurencia, will be, you will know that the military had actually, former president who was actually a dictator, used the military might in that country. The military, they actually enjoy a lot of largesse because they were actually the tools which Bashir himself was using. So the military too is used to power, and they are seeing them just of a sudden to be linguistic, that the power will just be relinquished in just less than seconds, and they will become nothing more relevant into that country. And this is what we are always say, that the military so far, the truth remains that they are supposed to be apolitical, because their action somehow also actually to maybe to secure the national territory and also take care of territorial integrity. But when they come to power in this kind of situation, that's why they are seeing it very difficult going. Then the agreement so far that has been signed by the PM, who has just been reinstated so far, it is somehow most people, particularly his own close allies, they are not actually accepting it because of the certain clauses that are actually within that. But whatever, I hope, I know that he has actually insisted that he did this because of the people, because he is somehow trying to curb the bloodshed that has actually been in that country as a result of the military takeover so far. Then, too, well, I see with him, but whatever the case may be, I pray that since they were actually on a transitional period, that they should hurry up and make sure that they bring forth a new government, they conduct election and bring forth the new government, so that that government should take over the country and write the way forward so far. And two, I also insist too that as soon as that elections they are actually conducted, the free and fair election they are actually conducted, as soon as they are conducted, I am sure the military agreement between Hamdok and his allies should cease to exist immediately. The military so far should not have a right to impose that they have to be part of the government. At least you know the military, they have their general, they have their colonel, they have their all their tonga, but they are not supposed to be part of the civil administration within that country so far. So within this transitional period, seeing Hamdok himself, he has insisted, he just signed that transition, that agreement with the military, at least to bring back some relative peace for the interests of the people. But he too should be able to press that the election should be organized as soon as possible. And as soon as that election is organized, the free and fair election is organized and the new PM is actually elected, then that military agreement should fail, should cease immediately, to give the new PM to start charting a new way forward for the Sudanese people. Once more, Laurencia and co in the studio. Have a nice day.
Thank you so much, Mr. Maurice Martin, for participating on the program. We have another caller on the line. Hello, sir, and thanks for joining us on the program.
Friends here and viewers of Africa Media. This is Shujirat calling from Yaoundé. Yes, the political situation in Sudan is really dramatic. Dramatic in the sense that the military are playing a high game, a game that they want to legitimize their position in power and rule as much as possible. Bringing Abdallah Hamdok to the post of a prime minister was just to fool the international community, to give the impression to Sudanese people that things have returned the way they were wanting. Hamdok, on the other side, who has no legitimate political power, on the other side was a power monger, because he would have still maintained his position and said, no, I will not become a prime minister under the military leadership. Of course, he was prime minister when a civilian and military coalition ruled Sudan, and he was dethroned and locked up and bring back. He will have still maintained his position and say, no, if the people that I represent are on the street and many have died, I cannot accept such a position. Let the military relinquish power immediately and organize, or let the military relinquish power or organize free and fair election, so that new people, new blood can come into the scene in Sudan and rule the country. But coming again to accept a position of prime minister, which he himself was saying that he should be reinstated. Reinstatement would have been if most of the ministers were not sacked or dismissed from their position, if all of them were brought back and then the military left, it would have been something that we can be talking about. But dismissing many ministers, arresting them, locked up, hurting some psychologically, and then bringing Hamdok to come and represent them is a non-event. If you look at the minds of the Sudanese people, they want the military to relinquish power. They want a civilian government to return into Sudan. They are, however, regretting the era of Omar al-Bashir, who is now somewhere laughing at the drama that is going on in Sudan, saying that look at them, these are the people who dethroned me, and today they are unable to form a government or elect a new president. That is why it's in the Omar Bashir's mind now, laughing at them. And we cannot accept the military to legitimize their position in Sudan by appointing a prime minister who has no political power, Because if he is allowed or he has been asked to name a new government, most of those in the government will be military officials. That therefore legitimizing, consolidating the power of the military in power in Sudan. So the only way out, Laurencia, African media, is for the people to remain on the street until Abdallah Fattah Burhan leave power and his team. So can peace return in Sudan. Or if he's not living, let election be organized. Let election be organized in Sudan so that a new president can be named to the satisfaction of the people. Because as of now, the civil coalition group will not accept anything other than that, except things turn the table, because politics cannot be predicted. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shu Gerard, for participating on the program. Our lines are still open. We still have 10 minutes to be together. And you can always call us and tell us what you think about the current situation in Sudan, this new political agreement that is facing a lot of resistance, especially from the Forces for Freedom and Change. That is a group that played quite a major role major role in the ouster of Omar al-Bashir. And it is reported that 5 of the ministers that actually resigned after Abdullah Hamdok agreed to that political deal with the military council were members of the FFC. So what do you think about the political agreement, and what is the way out for Sudan so that things can go back to normal? Now, Mr. Atem Ebako, let's quickly react to the last 2 callers. Now, if you listen keenly to the last 2 callers, they were all against the fact that the military is ruling in Sudan. Do you think Africans are somewhat threatened by military rule?
No, they are not. The problem here is not the military rule in Africa. Idris Deby was a military. He went to war front, yet he was a president in Chad. There was no challenge. Same as Gaddafi, he was a general. Those were all military people, same as Sankara. We don't have problem with military people. If you look at the government of China, it's military government, strict military. They impose on the people. But China is the leading economy of the world. The issue here, I don't understand what Africans want. The Africans are still in the idea of, how will I call it, freedom of speech. This is a very disorganized society. We cannot have society with people who do not have respect for one another. It's virtually impossible. We cannot have society where everybody speaks at the same time. We need to understand that even in the house of God, there is order. If we cannot have societies where there are order, families where there are order, then we are not going anywhere. And this is what many Africans are wishing and are praying for, everybody to do whatever they want to do. This cannot happen. We need leaders who know what is good for their people. That's how Libya was. That's how Burkina Faso was. Order in the society. And that's how you can build a society of morality. What do we really want in Africa? This is the same thing that made the assassination of Muammar Gaddafi, because the Libyans wanted to do whatever they wanted to do. Today, Muammar Gaddafi is not there. Look at Libya. It's the same thing with Iraq. Look at Iraq today. Syria, all the same. Is this the same road we want to go to? We need to allow societies that have order and leaders that know what is good for their people. I kept asking that, in which families do we organize elections to choose our parents? You need to have good political will for your people. Know what is good for your people, even when they resist you. The fact that we are talking here of democracy, we are not Democrats and we are not the West. We are Africans who do not practice democracy. We do not believe in same-sex marriage. All these things are what democracy is bringing. Women emancipation. Talking about that, it simply means a man has dethroned himself from being a man for a woman to emancipate. This is what we are talking about. We will need societies that each person knows their responsibility and own up to their responsibility and do what they are called to do. This is the kind of society we are talking of. We cannot be in a place where this person is talking and this person is talking and this person is talking. It makes leadership in Africa become very difficult. The former president Omar Bashir, that is the atmosphere in which he led the people under severe pressure. He cannot do well whether you like it or not.
You cannot be wishing something for your people, and then you have your mass population that have been carried away by Western civilization. Hong Kong, what the president of China did in Hong Kong, should serve as an example to all Africans. He cleaned up Hong Kong because Hong Kong wanted to show, the people who were living in Hong Kong wanted to show that they were Europeans. He said, you don't bring that here in China. And that was what he did in Hong Kong. Today, Hong Kong now is fully under the China government. We need order in our society. What we are looking here for, we are looking for development. We are looking for the betterment of the entire African continent. We don't want freedom. We want people who know what Africa is supposed to become. In the days of Hitler and before the instituted democracy, in the days of Europe, and even as we speak, can you do what you want to do? You cannot do what you want to do, not even in Europe. We have realized that even in the period of COVID, who can do what they want to do? People are using the military to impose what is good for the people. In Europe, that's what is happening. What is wrong with Africans? This is it's a call for concern that we don't need to use what is going to kill us. We need to go back to our values. We have believed, even in our common societies, villages, kings, chiefs, and all of that, those are well-built, organized societies that even when the white men came to Africa, they envied Africa because they said the people were well-civilized. The people were well-organized. Today, Africa is not the case. Is this the kind of society we want to be? So if the military is involved in politics, then they are doing the right thing. So must every African. My problem here, even in Africa, like in the case of Sudan, let me reverse it this way. I have seen in other platforms where people talk of puppet presidents in Africa, where they hold debates to insult presidents in Africa. You see, but to a lot of political analysts who do that, I think it's a huge pity. Because if you reverse that, you realize that those puppet presidents, so-called puppet presidents, are not even the problem. We understand that they are under a system. But I want to ask myself, based on my own statistics and statistics that anybody can go and Google, the majority of African people makes up to 90% about young people. For you to allow 3.3% of people above 60 and above to rule you, it means that those youths got a problem, not the old people. In Africa, we don't have old people's home. So if we have the old people in politics, for example, I think it's even better than having them in old people's home. But there must be a way for young men to assume power. Honor and respect are two different things. I have seen where in societies where you can honor somebody and the person returns it back to you in a form of respect. When a young man has reached a period of accountability and assumed responsibility, he needs to take charge. This is very important. Africans, I've given statistics about Sudan. All those people who are going out on the street to agitate, they are only agitating for a man of 77 to lead them. It's madness. This is the way I look at it. It's madness. Majority of these leaders who are now 77, when they entered into power, 80% of the population of the Sudanese were not even born. So what is wrong with the population? So it's not the issue of the puppet president. It's the issue where the young men are failing in their responsibility to assume their duty in a nation. How do you allow a man who is your father, knowing that we know in our societies that at the point where a man has gotten to that age, it is the child who needs, or the son who needs to assist the father, even to do many other things. And so that is why we believe that these old people and these old leaders should lead from behind, while the young people take from ahead. But the young people are not showing any sign of leading. That is the problem. If they were showing signs like Thomas Sankara, Abiy Ahmed and all of that, Africa will change, because the young people can call out on the diaspora, because the diasporans are also young population. So this is very important. So when we talk about puppet president, to me, I feel that is bullshit. Anybody you put there, you face the same resistance that the West is putting on you. So we don't need to get into the blame of blaming ourselves, blaming our leaders in the presence of the imperialists, because that's what we are doing right now. We need to understand that if the military in Sudan has signed a deal with the transitional government to be, is that how in look at it from all facets, this is to guarantee the people's future. Because if two bodies and leaders who were against themselves have entered into an agreement, that simply means that agreement guarantees the future of the people. If it were one man, we can say it's like this, but two opposition groups or parties have signed a treaty that the government that is going to be put in place should be a non-partisan government. How does this not reflect the people? Because we know what to be partisan means in Africa. To keep your party politics, keep your party in power, and then keep your democracy.
Favoritism.
And then tribalism and favoritism and all of that. But if you can take that away, then you can get leaders who can reflect the people. And if that's the role of the military, what is now wrong if the militaries are doing the right thing when the people who were supposed to do the right thing are not doing? And then someone who is not even called to do the right thing is doing, and then you want to find fault where there's no fault. To me, I think that is a huge challenge.
Now we are rounding up Mr. Atem Ebako. Now Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok has been accused by protest organizers of treason. Now, what can you say about this? And these protest organizers, they are saying that are going to continue to maintain pressure on the military civilian authority overseeing Sudan's transition. And we know that Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok, he now has the assignment of appointing cabinets of technocrats. That's the assignment the Prime Minister has at this point in time. So, rounding up, do you think Abdallah Hamdok actually took the wrong decision in signing this agreement as claimed by these protest organizers, and they are called saying that he has actually committed treason?
No, I think that the decision he has taken is a good decision, and it has shown that he is a man who seeks peace. This is very important, because for him to have accepted that simply means he has been able to search his conscience and understand that, okay, if this is going to be what is going to be good for the people, then I need to do this. And also what I would say also is that some of the things which many of these leaders do fail to do is that when they are in a position of making decisions and ruling the people, what they fail to always do is to put in a vision on the table. When I mean a vision, such a vision where even the least Sudanese know the plan that the president has for their nation. I remember George Washington had to do a pamphlet of 53 pages and shared in the entire Americans of what the vision for America holds for the Americans, except the black Americans. And this gave them a sense of unison and everybody working together in building that vision. So what is difficult for the Prime Minister and the military to come out with a clear vision and then circulate this vision in pamphlets where they go out like tracts, how churches divide tracts on street, where you want to convert Christians, you want to convert people into Christianity, convert Sudanese in building their nation. Come out with a vivid plan, with an oath on that plan that this is what you people are going to fight and build. Before you know, everybody will be working to keep and fight and build that vision. But when you come out and you make promises, you make vain promises that people have been hearing from decades over decades, and nothing has changed. We know how promises happen in Africa. But you need to compose yourself, come out with a clear vision. The military and the transitional government have a vision for the nation. Put it, spell it out on the TV, print it out, share it out to all your population. Before you know, those riots on the street will calm down. But when people are agitating and fighting against each other, it simply means there is lack of vision. Where there is no vision, the people will fight. But where in every society and organization where there is a vision, everybody is organized, working hard in building that vision. And this is what they need to do in Sudan. It's very important if they want to create peace in Sudan.
Thank you so much, Mr. Atem Ebako. Thank you so much, and we want to thank you all. This is where we are going to draw the curtains on today's edition of the program. Looking forward to see what happens in Sudan in the days ahead, how the new agreement is going to influence things for the Sudanese people. And of course, it is most important for the common man on the street. And we are also continuing to ask the question, why there is so much resistance if this political agreement is going to take the country out of the current situation in which it finds itself. We want to thank all those who took our time to be with us on the program. Thank you for your contribution, and thank you for always making our time to be with us to take a look at how we can take Africa forward. Thank you so much, Mr. Atem Ebakoh, for honoring our invitation. And another edition of the program comes up tomorrow at the same time. That is 14 hours GMT. Join us to take a look at what is still making headline news in the continent and how we can possibly find a way out of the issues that the continent is facing at this point in time. Until then, have a wonderful day in the company of the rest of our programs. Hello, you're on the program. Good day to you, sir.
I very appreciate it and very appreciate all what you are talking